Hi everyone, and welcome to my video post on Hyperion FDMEE Drill Through. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Ahmed Hafiz. I'm the Hyperion Jedi. I hope you find this video informational. And if you have any questions or would like to provide any feedback, please do so. Put it in the comments below, or drop me a note on Twitter at Hyperion Jedi or at hyperionjedi.com. So without any further ado, I'm just going to dive straight into today's topic, which is FDMEE Drill Through. Before starting, I'm just going to very quickly give a very brief update on where FDMEE is from an Oracle strategy, and it's definitely front and center. For those of you that have used the tool in the past, there's been many tools from an integration perspective with Hyperion. ODI, if you're from the dinosaur age, is HAL, and obviously there's the built-in tools, the outline load utility of planning and S-base load rules. So all these are integration tools, and they're all good in their own ways. They all have pros and cons, but today we're here to talk about FDME, so I'm just going to focus on that. Definitely front and center from a Hyperion perspective. Oracle PBCS now comes with FDME as default. You should probably get used to calling it data management, because that's the name that is used on PBCS. So PBCS is the Oracle Planning and Budgeting Cloud Service, and it's pretty much Hyperion on the cloud. So what can you do with FDME? Well, the reality is you can load data, you can write back data to the source, and you can drill through from your Hyperion system to the source system to actually view the transactional information there. In terms of what makes FDME such a great tool, well, the reality is it's a tool that's designed for finance users. Or business users, if you like. It doesn't require a great deal of technical knowledge, and it basically allows you to do complex mappings and manipulations from a simplified user front-end GUI that is directly accessible from the Hyperion workspace, but at the same time gives you the capability to do a lot more complex, awesome, tricky, revolutionary, whatever you want to term you want to use. But the reality is it does give you the capability as well to do the things that are a little bit out of the ordinary to accomplish specific client requirements. But at the same time, it has the simplified things that the user or the business user can go in. They have absolute traceability of how the number was loaded, what the source values were. It allows you to manipulate the prefix values. So for example, if your product dimension doesn't have a P in front of it in the source, but it has a P prefix to it in Hyperion, these are very small manipulations, but at the same time you can do a lot more complex manipulation of the data using even SQL statements in the process. But what's really awesome is that through its workbench, it allows you to see what the source metadata was and how it was transformed in FDME, and it allows you, to filter that data set in the workbench directly, so you're able to see how a certain number was made, and that's 90% of the time. You get a business user, they don't understand how the number got there, and 90% of the time the issue is that the number came from the source and they don't get it, and they have to prove that that's the case. FDME gives you awesome traceability and business user capability without any complex, or without the need of complex technical knowledge unless you absolutely need it. So that's FDME in a nutshell. I don't want to spend the whole time talking about FDME because we won't have enough time to talk about the drill through that it gives. So which is our main focus for today. So moving on. So, general feedback, where's FDME at? And, from a drill through perspective, well, the reality is, if you ask customers, I think there's two things that you sort of get from a negative perspective. One, drilling from bottom levels. There is a misconception, which I'll talk about later, that you can only drill from bottom levels. And the second one being is that the drill through is clunky. You require many button clicks to get where you need and to display what you want. And then when you want to change that, you have to almost repeat the process again, or go back halfway from the drilling in order to get to a different number. So I think what I aim to do as part of today's session is to tell you how great FDME Drill Through actually is, and break some of these misconceptions and prove them wrong. And the reality is, the more we use a tool, the more things we're going to get to know about it. So, I've found certain things about the tool, and I'm sure other people's are going to find other things, or they may already know these things, but I'm sharing them out there in hope that we can tell people how great the tool actually is, and get stronger adoption in the drill through space of the tool. So moving right along, in terms of an overview, so FDME can be used for on-premise Hyperion. It can also be used, as I mentioned, it comes bundled with the cloud. But you also have the capability to use it in a hybrid approach where you have an on-premise FDME and then you have a cloud data management, or FDME. And the reality is, the reason you would do this, the default approach is you load a file, the file gets sent up to the cloud via EPM Automate, and you can always drill back from that, there's no issue. But what if you want to directly integrate with your source systems? And the reality is that at times, the customer doesn't have the know-how, or internally they may not have the time or the capability to extract the required information from the source system, and FDME has knowledge modules that enable that. And that's where FDME in a hybrid sense actually tends to get to be used. But in terms of architecture, that's pretty much where the architecture is now. So you can have for on-premise, for cloud, or you can have a hybrid. So first thing that we're gonna cover is, what source system can I drill to? You can drill to any source system, and your source system can be on cloud or on-premise. As long as your source system accepts a URL, and that URL can be given a set of parameters that will dictate what report is to be run. And the parameters will actually say the combination of metadata that will need to be showed to display the transactional data that you're after. So long as your source system accepts a URL and can be given parameters to run a report, then definitely it can be used for drill through. Where does the source system need to be? Well, the source system can be pretty much anywhere, so long as you have network access. And without getting too technical on this, I'm just going to keep it simple. If you have network access to both Hyperion and to the source system, you can drill. So from if you were to go home after work and decide you're going to work from home, and you have Hyperion, you have PBCS, so it's cloud, but you don't have access to your source system, then obviously you can't drill. If you connect your VPN and all of a sudden you have access to both networks, then you're able to drill. So rule of thumb is if you have access to source and target, then you can drill. That applies also if your source system is on the cloud, and that applies if your Hyperion system is on premise and vice versa. So all the combinations, as long as you can access them, all good. Where does Hyperion need to be? Does it matter if Hyperion is on premise or on the cloud? Absolutely not. So it's not, the key thing to remember, it's not a server to server drill through connection. It is actually all done from the client. So it's strictly a URL that gets opened. That URL will get past some parameters from FDMEE, from the drill point that you want to drill from. That will usually pass back things like, if you're looking at a particular report with, projects and accounts, then those values, projects and accounts, and maybe the year and the period that you are looking at gets passed back to the source system that way, and it'll tell it to go run a report to display all the projects with that account and in those time periods. So it doesn't matter where Hyperion is, it doesn't matter where your source is. That's the rule of thumb. If you have access to both of them and if it accepts a URL with a set of parameters, you can drill to it. The next point is one of my favorite points on this topic, which is what level of drilling is possible. And there is a lot of misconceptions in this, and I think rightly or wrongly, they're probably all stemming from maybe not knowing the mechanics of FDMEE or maybe not understanding them. But the reality is there is capability to drill from FDMEE to a source from both bottom levels and from a summary level. That is possible. So I know I've got a lot of people questioning right now, what are you saying? It's not possible, but no, it is, and I have got it working. And the reality is it's strictly, as I said, understanding the mechanics of both S-Space and FDMEE. I'm going to go even a step further to say that it's even possible for S-Space BSO and S-Space ASO. And I know right now people are saying, is S-Space ASO doesn't even store summary level information. How are you going to drill back from that using FDMEE? And I'm just going to take a quick moment to run through that and maybe come back to it in more detail in a future post. So the reality is to understand that we have to understand how FDMEE loads data. So FDMEE will load a data cell, and it will, in its relational repository, store the information relating to what the source value was, what the target value is, and it will actually store all of that information in the FDMEE relational tables, and we use that information to drill back to the source. Well, the reality is there's nothing really stopping us from loading the values to the summary levels in Hyperion. As a matter of fact, S-Space doesn't stop that either, which means that if I'm loading the bottom level values, there's nothing to stop me from loading the top level values as well. But I think that the real question we have to ask ourselves is, does that actually make sense? I mean, does loading to the top levels make sense? Well, in some cases, absolutely. The customer might want to have a specific requirement for summary level drilling at a specific section of the hierarchy or at the top of the hierarchy. And at that point, I need to then decide how I'm going to tie that back to my source system. So let's take into account I have a combination of dimensions, and I'm going to load all those. I'm going to load values at bottom levels, and I have a requirement where I want to strictly look at summary levels for all projects. So rather than looking, at every single dimension and all the other dimensions that exist. I strictly want to see projects at the summary levels. So at that point in time, I'm going to load the data to the top level. I'm going to specify the very top level for everything else, but I'm going to specify only the project's dimension as the dimension of reference. And by that meaning is when I drill back into source, I'm only going to pass back one parameter, and that parameter is going to be my projects. The source system will then be able to take that and show me all the transactions that are listed for projects, or for the particular project that I'm looking at, but then give me everything else by top level. Now the reality is, if the requirement of the customer is, well, I want to be able to load anywhere in the hierarchy, and I want to be able to do that at any point in time, etc., and all that kind of jazz, well, the reality is, then yes, it's probably not suited for that, because otherwise you'll have to load the entire cube, and that absolutely would not make sense. And it would be very hard for the source system to digest what you're actually passing it back, because the reality is there's going to be things in your Hyperion hierarchies. There's going to be levels in the hierarchies that might not necessarily exist in your source system for you to drill back to. So obviously that wouldn't make much sense, and maybe a tool like Oracle BI would be better suited. But the reality is, if I'm to load at bottom level, and I am to calc the system, and I take those same bottom level values and load them to the top of my hierarchy, then I'm accomplishing the exact same thing, because when I calc, the bottom levels are going to aggregate, and I'm going to end up with the same values at the top, meaning that my drill value at the top is actually correct. So what happens from an FDMEE perspective when you load is that it stores whatever you load in those given combinations in the relational tables. And what we can do is we can create our own drill definitions to obviously reference those, and from there define the FDMEE drill URLs to take us back to the source system. And I know some of you maybe might be asking yourselves, well, yeah, but you actually said that you can do this with ASO as well. Well, the reality is absolutely. FDME throughout its history has actually allowed you to load the data. As a matter of fact, you can actually load member data into dynamic, and obviously it's not going to stick. Now ASO at top level obviously is non-stored, so that actually means that I am loading the values, SSpace is not actually storing the value, but because I've loaded the bottom levels, they're aggregating to the top, and it's the same value that ends up in FDME, and I'm just using the FDME tables to drill back to the source. It's actually a very, very clever way of doing this, and the only reason I'm across this is because this was a challenging requirement as one of our customers. So yeah, it's an interesting concept, and it is possible, and it does achieve the right thing. So lastly, we want to talk about out of the box drill through. And the drill through out of the box is, as you guys know, you go from source to the source system, but it takes many clicks to get there, and usually you end up with a landing page that takes you then to the data that you need. And the reality is, well, we have capability in FDME to specify the exact report that we want to get to. So if we can specify what report we want to get to on the source system, then we should be able to deliver the exact solution the customer wants. The best way to think about this is you go to a builder. The builder says, here are options to build your house. You pick one. It's not exactly what you wanted, because you probably want a better kitchen, you probably want the rooms to be a bit bigger, you want better bathroom and certain tiles and what have you. The exact same thing with FDME. People want exactly what they want. People want a specific report. They want to drill from FDME or from Hyperion and end up somewhere in the source system with a report without that many clicks in between, where they can then manipulate that report and get the values that they want. So by customizing the FDME solution, we can specify certain reports, so we can change the drill URL to give the customer exactly what they want. So, are there any source systems required are there any third-party tools required to facilitate drill through? And the reality is no. All you need is FDME. Like I said, for more complex requirements, I'd recommend something like Oracle BI, but I'm very keen to ensure that the data is always protected. So whether you're gonna rely on the data that's in FDME, or you're gonna rely on the data that's in the source, those are protected by both Hyperion and the source system. Other than that, you are really, if you put something in the middle, and if it's not an enterprise grade tool, you have to make sure it's secured. So that's a big thing for me, is ensure data security throughout the process of drill through. So to wrap things up, you can drill from FDME at summary levels, and any source, and whether it's on-premise or PBCS or cloud, you can drill, so long as you have access to both environments. For some reason, I feel like I'm on an episode of Mythbusters and I'm breaking the myth, but no, I hope you found this blog helpful. I know I've condensed a lot of information in a very short period of time, but hopefully it has shed some light for you on what is and what isn't possible with FDME from a drill through perspective to source. Thanks, and I look forward to our next video. If you have any questions, comments, please drop me a note. If you found this useful or not, like to hear everything. At Hyperion Jedi at Twitter and hyperionjedi.com. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.